From the North Beach Podcast Company in partnership with TSN, welcome to episode 7 of season 2 of the Ray and Greg's Hockey Podcast. We have Pierre-Luc Dubois, the newest member of the Winnipeg Jets, will join us on the podcast shortly to talk about how all that went down over the course of the weekend. Big weekend, obviously, in football, AFC, NFC championship games. Chris Abbott from coolbet.co will also join us to talk about a number of things, not just football. We've got Throat Punch, we've got Ask Ray and Dregs, we've got a little bit of everything, Ray, but it's busy. So I feel like because of everything that's going on, why don't we just dive right into the headlines?
Yeah, not much time here. We're not going to be here for 3 hours, Dregs. Get on it.
Headlines this week brought to you by our friends at Ligaro.com Jewelers. Valentine's Day will be here before you know it. So get to Ligaro.com for something that you know she's going to love. Do Valentine's Day upright like Ray does. Remember to use code RAY10 at checkout, 10% off select regularly priced items. Are you set yet, by the way? February 14th, right? It's not that far away. Are you set? You're in your beautiful office. You've got everything set up. Cammy.
Okay, Dregs. How long you known me?
Oh, man.
25 years?
Yeah, I was going to say 20 plus for sure.
Yeah. Do you think I'm ready?
No.
Not a chance.
No.
I know it's there. I've also got a milestone birthday coming up that I've got to prepare for, which there's no chance I would be stupid enough to go anywhere on that milestone birthday.
Yeah. Right.
So it's tough to plan that because can't do anything. And Cammy had, has kicked it out of the park on my 40th and 50th. Yeah. And so I got a lot of things going and I got nothing done. And
I feel like you're going to stress about this. I know you are because you're already talking about it. and I feel like when you stress, that stress kind of branches out. And now Matt and Manrup and the family aren't with you, are they?
Yeah, they live on the other side of the house.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if they were gone.
No, they had to come back, quarantine, and yeah.
All right. So I feel like it could be a tough couple of weeks for Matt.
What it's going to happen is Manrup's going to be really busy doing some planning.
Oh, see,
Matt's wife is amazing planner, and I think she's going to have a lot to do with this.
I love it. So I wasn't going to take it there, but I kind of knew that that's where it was going to go. But you and I are similar in this sense. So you've got a milestone birthday. I missed the milestone birthday, which has been well documented. We don't need to talk about that. But again, we're in similar worlds here. Cammy's birthday's coming up. You've got Valentine's Day, right around the corner. Holly's birthday is February 2nd, followed by Valentine's Day on February 14th. Although, and I love her deeply, one of the qualities that I love most about her is when it comes to birthdays and Valentine's Day, Holly's like, whatever, just whatever. Valentine's Day especially, but Ligaro bailed.
I would say it would be Ligaro. Oh yeah, Ligaro's going to be involved. There's no question. Like I'd like to say that, hey, we'll get a really nice takeout, delivery dinner, but we've been doing that for 9 months. So whether it's good,
if you need some tips on hooking up with a tomahawk steak and getting that bad boy on the grill, you just let me know.
Well, if we do that, Riley and Reese and I will enjoy it. Cammy doesn't eat steak, so we'll enjoy it. I don't know what she's going to do, but it'll be great.
What a weekend it was, man. Somewhat predictable. I know you were busy with a varying amount of games going on. Friday I did the Leafs game. Oh boy, I don't even remember who they played. Who the Leafs played?
They were Edmonton Friday.
Yeah. And then Calgary, of course, on Sunday. And the reason that I'm forgetting who the Leafs even played, that entire game, and I'll openly admit this, I maybe watched 5 minutes of that game. And I'm on the panel, for heaven's sake. So just as we're set to do the pregame show, I get start paying attention alert from a couple of sources specific to Patrick Laine, Jack Roslovic, and Pierre-Luc Dubois, right? So now I'm busting it all Friday night, and trying to pay attention to the Leafs and Oilers and do panels and whatnot. But we had a real strong sense on Friday that the deal was essentially done. There was a bit of a hiccup that needed to get cleaned up on Saturday, and it did get cleaned up very quickly Saturday morning. And then they consummated the trade. What was your initial reaction when you started to see some of the speculation as early as Friday, and then ultimately when the deal closed on Saturday?
Well, I mean, of course, this goes back some time. So there were in both cases, both Laine and Dubois, there felt like there was this inevitability to it, that a deal was going to get made. Now, whether they were traded for each other or for somebody else, it seemed like they were going to get traded this year. Dubois' situation, of course, came to a head, and you knew there was some immediacy to that, or felt there was going to be. So it didn't have that surprise shock value that some trades have, although there's less of that than there ever was. But to see two players that are so young and so good get traded for each other is really, quite shocking, quite surprising. And so instantly, of course, you try to go, okay, or I do anyway. Okay, so Laine's going to Columbus. Who's he going to play with? What's his, how's he going to fit into that style and the way Torts coaches, and like, how's that going to happen? And where's Dubois going to play? Wait a minute. Winnipeg already had a really deep center ice position with Scheifele and Stastny and Lowry. And now you're putting this machine in the middle of it. Well, somebody's going to the wing. Who's going to the wing? What are the lines going to be like? Oh yeah, by the way, they can't even have them for 2 weeks or whatever the quarantine's going to be. And so there was lots of that stuff. But I got a question for you. So you're in there and you get your heads up that from wherever that, hey, something's going. Now you chase a lot of dead ends, right? Like there's, that you go, it looks like it's happening. Stop, finished. So when do you really get excited about something? And how do you chase it that you don't let your enthusiasm drag you to a place that the news guy has to be?
Yeah. Well, number one, you have to trust your sources. And in a deal of this magnitude, the sources come from all corners, right? To some degree, it can be agents and not the primary guys always involved here. You can, all the agents involved have their own people, their own staff. So it can come in that way. It can come from management teams, clearly, both Winnipeg, Columbus, player sources directly. I mean, we've got spies all over the place. And by we, I think that's, and this isn't me waving the TSN flag entirely, but it kind of is. So we've got a group chat, and it's myself, it's Bobby Mack, who's semi-retired, but still likes to engage on occasion, Frank Saravalli, and Pierre LeBrun. So on Friday, as soon as I start getting a sense that, look, this could happen, it could happen very quickly, I mean, you send the SOS out to our group, and we divide and conquer pretty well. There's not a lot of stepping on toes. I establish, okay, I've got this guy, this guy, this guy. You guys just blanket your coverage, and let's see where it lands. But the triggers and the just the obvious markers were there, right? I mean, dating back to Dubois asking for a trade, and then you had Torts going on radio and basically challenging the kid to come clean with why he wants out of Columbus. I know Pat Brisson well. I know that wouldn't have sat well with CAA, but they handled things very professionally. And then the obvious occurs where, Pierre-Luc Dubois doesn't have a very good game. He's benched subsequently because of his play. And as Torts clarified after the fact, Ray, the 5 games prior where he didn't like the effort that he was getting from Dubois, that's when it really kicked into a 5-alarm fire. Because at that stage, the Jarmo Kekalainen, he's got one of 2 choices. He either works with what he has, which was a lot. And we're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens here in just a moment, but 20-plus teams were interested in Pierre-Luc Dubois. So Jarmo either deals with this and gets rid of the distraction, or he has to consider firing his coach, John Tortorella. And that was...
Well, is there not one other possible solution? And it would have been what Jay Feaster did way back in the day. with Vinny Lecavalier and Torts. And he said, called him into a meeting and he said to Torts, I'm not firing you. And he said to Vinny, and I'm not trading you. So figure it out.
Figure it out.
So I guess that would have been maybe that wasn't even possible. But I'm curious because you didn't really answer this. You're like are you excited or you just got your work boots on?
I mean, the adrenaline flows, especially, Ray, when you've got it absolutely nailed. And truth be told, again, I knew what the primary elements were on Friday, but because they had to work something out Saturday morning, it delays what you hope is the inevitable. And then that's where the sleeplessness comes in, because you're like, okay, I mean, I speculated on Twitter. I went on SportsCenter Friday night and essentially laid the deal out without saying it's done. I just said, here are the primary pieces, knowing full well that it would have taken something pretty significant to pull this thing off the track on Saturday morning. So yeah, it's exciting. To break a trade is fun, because lots of times, especially a trade deadline, and you've lived through these things where we have pieces of a deal. So we might be able to say, Pierre-Luc Dubois is about to be traded to the Winnipeg Jets, Patrick Laine going the other way. But then all of a sudden you learn a half hour later that, Jack Roslovic is part of it. And, there's a third round draft pick. And by the way, the Jets also are retaining 26% of Laine's salary. So, but in the moment, you don't even care about the details. You just want to fire out, because of the stage that we're on with the trade deadline. So to get this one so cleanly is a rarity. And, it's not something I take lightly, but it does take a lot of work. There's no question.
Do you remember your first big scoop?
Yeah. And I was terrified, sleepless.
I bet, man.
You ready? It was Joe Thornton to the San Jose Sharks. And I'll tell you, and God rest his soul, John Ferguson Sr. was the guy who actually confirmed it for me. And that was pre-Twitter. I mean, you got something like this. So, he answers his phone, and I got to know John a little bit through Winnipeg Days and whatever else. And I said, hey, I'm hearing rumblings of this trade. And he goes, yep, good deal. Just got it done. And Marco Sturm's going to be a good player and all this stuff. Wayne Primo was part of that trade, right? And we went through it all. And I had my old BlackBerry at the time, and I'm like, because there's no Twitter, there's no social media, so I'm like hammering out this 2-paragraph brief, which at the time I was at Sportsnet. You send it to the desk, it gets posted, right? That story got posted, and I was so rattled because neither the Bruins nor the Sharks confirmed it for hours. And I'm watching TV and there's a TSN game. And I mean, Bob McKenzie's the godfather, and he's just referring to my report, not naming him, but just says, hey, there's a report out there that Joe Thornton has been traded, working on confirming. And I was sideways. I was like in the fetal position on the couch, because I was like, oh my God, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? And then either Boston or San Jose confirmed, and away we went. So,
well, no use dipping your toe in. You might as well jump in deep, right?
That was a bad one. And just one more trade story. We can gotta move along here. But so, and speaking of Bobby Mack, when Roberto Luongo got traded to Florida, now think of this, okay? Mike Keenan is the general manager of the Florida Panthers, a real good old buddy of mine, and was then. Dave Nonis as the general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, right? Well, again, I feel like I've got this thing buttoned down because I knew it was happening. I just was told you can't report it until I give you the green light. And friggin' Bob is like hiding in a potted plant in the lobby of a hotel somewhere. And he runs into either Keenan, I think it was Keenan, I don't know if it was Nonis, but Mike says, yeah, I was talking to so-and-so, and we just acquired Roberto Luongo. It's going to be great. Absolutely pulls it right from under my nose. So that one was The Thornton was the biggest. The Luongo trade to Florida, that one left a mark. Bobby Mack, that was more than a flesh wound back there. So anyway, it was a good day, and we'll talk to Pierre-Luc Dubois as well, obviously talking about how he's going to transition from Columbus to Winnipeg. But I want to talk about the Habs. Actually, let's try and lump 3 Canadian teams into the headlines before we move on here. Montreal was pretty deep in on Pierre-Luc Dubois. And this would have been a tough one for Marc Bergevin, right? Like, he's got so much great chemistry there. You watched it firsthand in the series against the Vancouver Canucks. It sounds like Jarmo Kekalainen was stuck on Nick Suzuki. That was the piece that needed to come out of Montreal. And it also sounds like Montreal was willing to talk about Kotkaniemi, maybe Cole Caulfield potentially. And Jarmo knew what he was getting from Winnipeg in Jack Roslovic and Patrick Laine. So do you think that this fits into that discussion of sometimes the best deals are the deals that you don't make if you're Berge and the Montreal Canadiens, with all due respect to Dubois, who's a terrific center?
Yes. I mean, everybody's got to have a line that they draw across their prospects page and says, I'm not going past this line. Anything on top of the line, I'll move any one of these guys in some combination, but there's a line that I'm not touching. And so I can see why they would have maybe preferred Suzuki past Kotkaniemi, only in it appears like Suzuki is more polished right now. I still think Kotkaniemi is going to be a hell of a player.
I do too.
But this deal, because of what else was sitting there, which of course was the Winnipeg component, didn't have to be about hope.
Right.
And so Bergevin is not going to make that move and rip apart his prospect pool and touch Suzuki too.
Yeah.
So he's not going to do it. And so for Kekalainen, he's like, look, he probably feels Kotkaniemi is going to be a good player too.
Yeah.
Yet there's still some road to travel there. He doesn't have to make that deal. So I'm not surprised Montreal was in deep to look at it and then said, hey, look, we like the way our team is constructed, because I got to say this. I think there's no team perfectly constructed.
Right.
But that team addressed everything that they need to address. And we've seen teams have to go into their taxi squad, and it's a young guy, a question mark. Montreal goes in and they wheel out Corey Perry. And if they need another guy, it's going to be Michael Frolik.
Yeah.
Like they have positioned themselves. I think they understood this taxi squad really well and found 2 veteran players that could stomach being in and out a little bit, but knowing that by the end of this, they're going to have a big part in it.
And you know what I also like about that, and again, I'll give the Habs some credit, and it starts with Berge, is being honest and upfront with those guys, Frolik and Corey Perry, and saying, look, you're going to have a role on our team. We like the balance with the veteran presence and the youth. But because of the mechanics of what has to happen, we want you to be more or less full-time players, but you are going to spend some time on the taxi squad. And to get to the taxi squad, we're going to have to put you on waivers. Like, then you allow the player, do you not, right, to make an informed decision, right? Yeah, we want to come to Montreal, and we understand, again, everything that has to go into this, but you're being honest with us. Okay, if we get claimed off waivers by another team, then so be it. But you were honest with us, and it's worth the gamble. That has to be how those guys looked at
it. For sure it did, but just think of that 24 hours when they're on waivers.
Yeah.
Like, you could be anywhere. Like, what if you get claimed by a team that is totally rebuilding, that goes, you know what? At $750,000, Corey Perry can really help our team and help our young guys. And you got to go, or you retire. Like Jason Spezza said, he was going to retire. So being upfront's the only way to be. And I will say, from my experience, that's not always the way it goes.
Right. Okay. Before we wrap up the headlines, and man, we've got a good episode. We've got Chris Abbott coming up, Pierre-Luc Dubois coming up. Things getting restless in Vancouver. Feels like it is.
Yeah, that was a bad week. Worst goals against average in the league at over 4.4 per game. They gave up 11 high danger chances a game against Montreal this past week.
It's tough.
I mean, they got shredded. Their best players, who are Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, have had really rough starts to the season. Pettersson worse than Hughes. Their goaltending is adequate. I think they really missed Jacob Markstrom. He bailed out a lot of that mess. Yeah. Their defense is thin, and when they get a couple of injuries or an injury and a nick up, then they're in trouble. And without their top guys playing very well, they're really thin up front. Now, Pettersson has just shifted agents over to CAA. And I'm just from my own experience, I hated my contract year. I hated the uncertainty of it. I hated each goal feels more important because that's going to put me in a different class. And then if he's dealing with changing agents at the same time, you got to understand it's not just calling a guy up and saying, hey, yeah, we're done. And you have a personal relationship. It's hard. It's really hard to do. And so a lot of things probably bubble up there. But at the end of the day, Pettersson is not playing very well. And if he doesn't play very well, Vancouver's screwed. The one thing to keep an eye on here, as it's starting to get, as you call it, restless, it's a little more than that. The sea is angry, my friend. It's an old Seinfeld. Is Jim Benning might be, in a tough spot. I don't know how he's going to improve the team. Like a lot of teams, they just don't have any cap space. Yeah. The reason that they're in a difficulty spot, cap space wise, is the free agency deals they've signed, that he has signed, have put them in this spot. Louis, they wrote it down here so I wouldn't forget. There's Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, Antoine Roussel, and even Tyler Myers. Yeah. Those are all big money contracts, and you're not getting a lot back. Like Myers is best at about 17 minutes a game. You're asking him to play 24. It's too much for him. And so they're in a tough spot. They got a coach in the last year of his contract. You've got your two star players in the last years of their contract, and they're young. They're 22 years old. Yeah. So it's a dangerous time, because if you fall too far back here, it's going to be tough to make it up. No question. Well, we're spending a lot of time paying close attention to what's going on in the North Division, and we're going to have to refocus here a little bit. I'm challenged by it, to be fair, because of everything going on with the 7 Canadian teams. I'm slipping when I look around the league, and there are 24 other teams. I forgot about all of them. You know what? I watched Chicago and Detroit yesterday. It was on NBC in the morning here. It's 9:30 in the morning. I flicked it on. I was waiting for the football, and I'm like, if you look at that, a couple other teams. Like, I'm with you, man. It's like, and so I think that's one of the reasons why this division can't stay. Right. That you lose the global look. The people in the States will never see Connor McDavid. Yeah. They won't see Austin Matthews. And so that's probably, in my mind anyway, one of the reasons that it can't work, but long term. But wow, I think it's a 7-team league right now. Yeah, it feels that way. We've got Chris Abbott standing by, plus our interview with Pierre-Luc Dubois is brought to you by our friends at coolbet.co. Check out Coolbet's free NHL prediction pool contest for a shot at some unbelievable prizes. You have to be 19 years of age or older, and Coolbet reminds you, stay cool, always bet responsibly. All right, the newest member of the Winnipeg Jets, Pierre-Luc Dubois, is joining us from quarantine in Winnipeg. Now, we know that the Canadian teams have requested an exemption, so 14 days turns into 7 days with 4 consecutive negative tests. So you're waiting word on that. Let's assume that the Canadian government doesn't change things. What is your plan for the next 14 days in a hotel room in Winnipeg?
Yeah, well, the team was nice enough. Right now I'm in a house, so I get a little more space. I got 2 dogs, so it would have been a long 2 weeks in a hotel room with them. But the team said they were going to come drop off a bike, foam rollers, bands, stuff like that, so I can at least move around and maybe during the games I'll follow a line and every time they're on the ice do a couple of sprints. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of video, a lot of time to watch the games, catch up on meetings that I've missed. But I'm really excited for the 2 weeks to end and for me to be able to actually join the team.
Are you a reader? Do you read? Do you watch shows? Like you can only watch so much hockey.
Yeah, exactly. I they have this app that they have all the games. I already watched 3 games in the past 2 days. So I watch shows. I like to read. My parents are here, so they can come drop off stuff outside. And I can just pick them up. So I'm not quite sure. I haven't planned out the next 10 days or the next 12 days, but I'm sure I'll get to that pretty soon.
So Pierre-Luc, this trade could have been anywhere, right? It ends up being Winnipeg, and your parents are there too. So when you get the word and you call them and say, "Yeah, I got traded, and I'm coming there," what's their reaction?
Yeah, well, the night before the trade, I heard something was happening, and you kept hearing the same couple of teams, and you hear Winnipeg's one of them. My parents, my mom right away. My dad, he's in the hockey world, so he knows, that there's a lot going on, so he doesn't want to bother me too much. But my mom right away, is it true? Are you actually coming here? And this mom, I don't know, like let's wait till the morning and let's wait for an official call. And then when it officially happened, I got a call from my agent, then from the team, and then I called my mom, and I think, like you guys know, she was pretty happy. She's still in the cloud. My dad had to calm her down because she can't see me for 2 weeks. But she was pretty happy when I saw her outside the first night when she dropped off, just stuff for me to be able to eat in the morning.
When this was playing out, did you get kind of twisted down the road? Oh, I think it might be this team, it might be that team, or are you able to just, it'll be what it'll be?
Yeah, I think the goal was to just go out there and not concentrate on any of that. It wasn't in my control. But you know how it is. You hear rumors, you hear these things, and it's hard not to at least think about it a bit and see yourself in different situations. And but I try my best to just let it go. And like I said, none of this, whatever happened, was in my control. So, and I knew that, and that was no issue for me. So that's what I tried to do. But sometimes it gets a little complicated.
Now, I got traded a couple of times, and nobody was too concerned about it when I got traded. I just got a phone call and I went to the new place. Everybody in the league is talking about the potential for a deal, as the way the last week, maybe more publicly than anyone wanted, played out. What's that like, knowing that everybody's, like, literally everyone in the hockey world's wondering where your situation's going to be playing out?
Yeah, it was really crazy, hectic past week or so. The team and I talked, during the negotiations. Then it got to a point where, we really sat down with each other and talked more about, what their intentions were and what mine were. We tried. We wanted to keep it as close to the vest as possible. And then, as it got on and on, I think more and more people started finding out, and then the cat's out of the bag. And then it's okay. Plan B this is a public thing now. And like I said, it's kind of the same thing with the rumors. You try not to think about that too much. You try just to go out there and play. Obviously it's not the easiest thing in the world, but our job as a hockey player is just to play hockey. And none of anything that was going to happen was going to be in my control. It was all in Columbus's hands. And, once the trade happened, then it's just like a 500-pound weight off your shoulders. You just get to go play hockey, and there's no more of everything from before.
Yeah, from a timing perspective, I mean, you and your agent Pat Brisson would have had multiple conversations, prior to the start of the season, right? It's not like you woke up one morning in the off season and said, I feel like I need to ask for a trade. But you ask for a trade, and then you negotiate your bridge, your contract extension, and then it gets to this point. Any regret in maybe thinking you could have or should have pushed harder for the trade so that all this stuff gets dealt before the start of the season?
I mean, like you said, me and Pat talked about it. It was something that was in my mind for a long time. It wasn't just one morning I wake up and it's okay, this is what I want to do. I think like every guy, when I got drafted to Columbus, I wasn't planning an exit. I was planning for this is going to be where I'm going to play for the rest of my career, maybe. And then as things went down, you start to realize different. You start to think different things, and we let Columbus, without going too much into detail, we let Columbus know a couple weeks, month, or something like that before camp. And then, like we said, we negotiated with them. We talked with them. We didn't want to make it hard on the team. We didn't want to make it, too restraining on the team. They asked us if the 2-year deal was something we could do to help them a bit. And it was something that, like I said, it wasn't, me saying that and then get me out of here as soon as possible. It was, look, this is my intentions. What my intentions are. I'm going to play. And if, they said they wanted me to sign, I signed the deal. I didn't want to make it too, harder, even harder on them. And then, like I said, we had a plan, the team and I. Then it got out a little bit more public than we thought it would, but that's just part of the business sometimes.
Funny how that works.
Did that make it as soon as it got public? Like, does that make it like, okay, this is going to end? Like, this is going to happen quicker than I thought? Did make playing harder because now it's all out in the open?
Yeah. Like I said, I don't want to go too much into detail of everything.
Yeah, look, no, we're not going to ask you to dig into torts and all that stuff. That's
But it's definitely. I mean, when I asked for the trade, like I said, we had our plan in place, and then what ended up happening wasn't the plan necessarily. We knew that there was going to be rumblings, but there's not just I'm not the only guy in the NHL's history that's asked for a trade. So we knew that it was going to be some talk, but we could just go about our business and as the season goes on, I still signed a 2-year deal. And then it comes out even more publicly. And then after that, it definitely was a little more hard. It was a little more complicated to just concentrate and go play. When you come to the rink and something's changed. And a lot of stuff has changed, and a lot of opinions have changed. It's a little hard, but like I said, you have to be strong and you have to just concentrate on playing your game and playing the best you can.
Now, are you the type of guy that'll follow Patrick Laine? I know when I got traded, I followed the guy I got traded for, and I wanted to know how he was doing all the time. Then after a while, you don't care anymore. But are you that type of guy, or like, will you notice?
Yeah, probably, maybe a little bit. And I think the hardest part, let's say I didn't want to follow him, would be, I think everybody in the hockey world, make me follow him, by asking questions. Right. But I hope nothing but the best for him in Columbus. I mean, I met amazing people there, have amazing relationships with the staff and, the trainers and the equipment guys and the players especially. And, I hope nothing but the best for him and the team and Jack Roslovich too. I hope that, it goes well there and we can play them in the finals every year and, win every year, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's something that's stuff that happens in the hockey world.
You said you hated playing against Winnipeg, one of the teams you hated to play against, and now you're going to be one of those guys. What did you hate, and what are you looking forward to?
I hated the fact that they're so big and fast and strong and skilled. I think that as a team, it's important to be able to play you can play every kind of game. If it's a skill game, you can play it. If it's a physical game, you can play it. If it's fast and up tempo, you're good to go. And I think the Jets are a team that, they cover every style of play. And, that's what I found annoying was to play against him. And then, you top it off with one of the best goalies in the NHL. So it's really a recipe for success. And to be able to join a team like that, to be able to play with players like Nick Ehlers and Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Kyle Connor, Lowry, Kopp. I mean, the list goes on and on to me, and Morrissey. It's a really exciting time. I watched the game yesterday against Edmonton. Like I said, I watched 2 other games also on the app. Hopefully by the time this is over, I'll know all the tendencies, but it's a really fun team to be joining. There's
a lot of speculation around the NHL. I mean, we see you as a center. I'm sure Paul Maurice sees you as a center. I mean, talk about a 1-2 punch if you've got Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois, but you also have Paul Stastny, who's a veteran centerman, and Lowry's there, a very good NHL centerman. Has Paul given you a clear indication that when you're healthy and you're in the Jets lineup, that you're in the 2-hole? Or, I mean, it might be fun playing on the wing for a bit with Scheifele and Wheeler as well.
Yeah, no, we had a quick conversation when I got traded. He said that I'll fit in perfectly in the lineup. They have a lot of depth, like you just said. It can be that's the thing. I can play wing, I can play left, I can play right, I can play center. That's one of the things that I've been, I want it to become. And I think it's easier for a coach when you have guys that can play every position. But if I'm playing with Scheifele and Wheeler, if I'm playing with Connor and Ehlers in the middle, or if I'm playing with Connor and I don't think there's a bad line, a bad situation for me in there. So wherever I have to play is no problem for me.
Your father's one of the coaches with the Manitoba Moose, and you say about playing all 3 forward positions. What were you able to draw aside from your dad, but as a hockey coach from your dad?
Yeah, I mean, he as a kid, I remember when I was like 8 years old, and he would do video for his teams, and instead of watching a movie or watching TV, I'd go watch video with him, and he'd do his video, but every once in a while ask me a question, and just like, where do you think this guy should have been, and where do you think this stick should have been, and stuff like that. And he's always taught me that scoring goals and assists are fun, but a lot of the details of the game is what makes you win or not. And as you grow up, everybody wants to score and have assists, but positioning and stick positioning and where you support your Ds and where you support your wingers isn't always as exciting, but that could be the difference between a win and a loss. So I've been trying to do that as my career's gone on. I'm still learning a lot, and hopefully I can learn from the center and the centers and the coaches here. But I think that's what he taught me the most, is just the details of the game are just as important.
Had you ever worn number 13 before? I see you're gonna wear 13. There used to be a guy there that wore that and did pretty well, but in Timo Solani, is that a number you like, or one you've had?
I wanted 18 because my dad wore 18, and that's the number I've worn my entire career. And then Brian Little has it. So then my second option was number 11, and then Nate Thompson has it. And then my third option was 81, and Connor has it. So then I got down to, okay, who from my life, who friends that have worn a number, and it's a number I like. And then, one of my childhood best friends growing up, he had number 13 one year. So I was talking to him about it, and he's one of the first guys that texted me when I got traded. And he said, what number are you going to take? I looked at all the roster, and they're all taken, the ones you want. So I did kind of like a poll with my friends, and the 13 was the number that came up. And I didn't even think of the Solani one, but I didn't think of that, but now that it's pretty big shoes to fill.
How are you getting to know your teammates? I mean, it can't be easy. Again, we started the conversation talking about what you're going to be doing in quarantine. I'm assuming there's a lot of Zoom chats with Scheifele, Wheeler, with the leadership group and the coaching staff. Yeah.
A couple of guys already reached out when I got traded. I texted them back, and then I can't see them because I have to be in quarantine and I got a test. But staying in contact as much as I can with them. They said they're gonna film every meeting so I can be a part of the meetings on Zoom. So it's not the same as in person, but trying to stay as up to date as possible. So when the 2 weeks ends, there's not an even bigger period of adaptation. It's just I can jump into it and like I've been there the whole time.
All right, buddy. Well, look, we wish you the best of luck. We know that you're going to be a great add to the Winnipeg Jets. You're cleared to do so. Here's hoping sooner rather than later. And we appreciate you taking the time to join us. We know that you were jammed up and have been since the news broke that you're now a member of the Winnipeg Jets. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you, guys.
And all the best, Pierre-Luc.
Thank you.
Well, Ray, working in a Canadian market for as long as you have, it's a demanding place to be for an NHL player, let alone a star NHL player like Pierre-Luc Dubois in his new surroundings in Winnipeg. But man, what an engaging young man. And I met him prior to his draft, and you kind of got that sense of bubbly personality, very articulate, well-spoken, but he's going to fit in nicely. I mean, the Winnipeg Jets, as we talked about earlier in the pod, they paid a price for Pierre-Luc Dubois. They gave up a potential superstar in Patrick Laine. Where would you position him in the lineup if you were Paul Maurice? Would you give him the number 2 hole and, just work around it? Or would you throw him up there with the big boys on the top line and see how that works on the wing?
My initial thought is that I would play him with Scheifele and Wheeler. And the reason I would is because I don't think Paul Stastny is suited for the wing. Off a standstill, I don't think Stastny's quick enough. I think he's better in the middle of the ice. And if you had Dubois, Wheeler, and Scheifele, then you have Connor, Stastny, and Ehlers. Mm-hmm. Then I love Kopp and Lowry together. I would hate playing against those two guys. Like, I would hate it. And then you have somebody like Matthew Perreault or Mason Appleton, and you're like, that top 9 would be as good as anybody in Canada, that top 9 group. And so I think that's where I would start him, knowing that he's my number 2 center.
Right.
And if it didn't quite work, then I'd jockey some people around. But I think a lot of Dubois. Yeah. I think Laine is going to score 40 goals every year. And I think he's going to have a 50-goal year or 2 or 3. But I know why. We know why Winnipeg made the deal. We know why Columbus made the deal. And I think it's very possible that both teams are going to get exactly what they want.
Yeah. So we often look at these young NHL stars as property, as assets. That's what they are. Just throw them into the lineup. Let's hope it works out. Entertain the fans. Everybody's happy. You'll make your millions and millions of dollars. As we're talking to Pierre-Luc, and he's talking about his mom waiting outside in Winnipeg. And you can just imagine what that's like. I mean, you've lived it through Landon and whatnot. And people didn't realize that Eric Dubois is an assistant coach with the Manitoba Moose and has been for a while now. But this makes it a little extra special, doesn't it? He's not just a commodity that the Winnipeg Jets paid a high price to acquire. He comes in, he's going to have to be a very impactful, influential Jets player for the team to have success. But there's a human story to this that's kind of neat as well.
I mean, I can't even imagine that as the road twisted, 20 teams are interested and then 10 teams are interested. And there would be a point as a parent, you go from hope to, oh boy, I think this really could be. And then to have your son traded to where you live, like, that doesn't happen, except it just did. And so for the Dubois, it couldn't have turned out any better. I mean, can you imagine how excited his mom is? Like, you got to remember, he's not 32, he's 22.
Yeah.
Right. So that was a really cool part of the story.
Ask Ray and Dregs Anything promoted a question that got me thinking and developing my throat punch candidate for this week, Ray. And I believe the person's name was Dylan, wondering about the fake crowd noise, inside the NHL buildings. Right. Dylan believes that it's gotten to be annoying. I don't mind it so much from a couch perspective. I don't really. I mean, I'm not in the building. It doesn't really matter. I know it's fake,
Right.
but it doesn't really take away from the watching experience for me. Now, last Wednesday, I'm doing an NBC game, Toronto and Edmonton, and first time, by the way, in a live arena, and it was a surreal experience.
Isn't it weird?
Spooky, like everything from the poor ticket guy when I went to park my truck. There's no vehicles in the parking lot right beside Scotiabank, which is always jammed up, right? And buddy, I say, how much do I owe you? And he goes, I don't know. What do you want to pay me? I'm like, really? Things that bad? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I don't know. There's nobody here. Like, you can just park if you want. I'm like, no. Like, what do I owe you? He goes, give me $20. So I felt like I gave him 30, and normally it's probably 35 in a healthy environment in Toronto. So I'm like, this is bizarre. Get through security, which was a breeze. Go up to one elevator, takes you up to the 300 level, which is where I had to stay. And it's Sean McKenzie from Sportsnet and Chris Johnson from Sportsnet, center ice in the 300 level, socially distanced in this kind of camera bay area. And that's where I had to stay for the hockey game, which was great. So I do a pregame hit into NBC's pregame. Couldn't hear Liam McHugh, the host, at all because the music was so damn loud for a warm-up that nobody is there for outside of the players. Like, I was like this. It was like I was in a war zone somewhere reporting from like, I was so pissed off because I'm like, wait a second. I mean, yeah, I understand it's an NHL regular season game. Mm-hmm. Maybe the players get pumped from the warm-up music. I don't know, but it's for TV. I mean, the TV product.
Okay, so I wonder, yeah, at the World Juniors, man, you couldn't even think. Like at times, like it's so loud. And my thought was, I wonder if it's like that because they need that volume for television. Because they sure don't need it for the rink. Like if, once the play starts, it's like being at a minor hockey game. If two guys' sticks hit each other, you hear that sound.
Yeah.
You're like, it's so weird. But I work at EA Sports, as you know, and so I was asking them about how they do that because the NHL got all the sounds from the EA game. And there's basically a computer board. And it was described to me, the operator plays it like a piano. And they have to know each sound corresponds to an event on the ice. And so they're just playing it like this, playing the music or playing the sounds, the cheers, the groans, the sound after a hit, all that stuff. And he said, so the operators are super important. However, I don't know who's working the volume, but I think they're turning everything to 11.
Well, Dylan gets the assist on the throat punch for this week in episode 7. All right, Ray. Chris Abbott from coolbet.co now joining us on the Ray and Dregs podcast. And frankly, it's become one of our, if not our most popular segments week to week here in episode 7. Before we get talking about the UFC fight and obviously the AFC NFC championship, the upsets, all of the storylines from coolbet.co's perspective, I tweeted at Chris on Twitter a short while ago before recording this. And I don't know if you caught it, Ray, but you always tease me about the amount of meat that is consumed in the Dreger household. I mean, whether it's a Western Canadian thing, doesn't matter.
I don't know if there's any vegetables there. There's a lot of meat.
Well, there was actually a vegetable in the NFC AFC Championship Sunday football extravaganza. So my son put me onto these things. We had pre-ordered a couple of Raptor eggs. Now, Raptor eggs are a stuffed jalapeno. So there's your vegetable. I'm assuming it's like cream cheese or something in the middle of this thing, wrapped in ground pork, then wrapped in bacon. So it's about that big, probably about a pound each. Holly Dreger, she may have had a bite or two. Would you guys believe I scarfed back 1 3/4 Raptor eggs watching football yesterday.
Oh, how long does that take to eat one of that?
Oh man.
I mean, it took some time. I've had meat sweats a couple of times. The tomahawk steak a few weeks back.
Yeah.
I had the meat sweats after the ribs. A lot of ribs for a family of 4. Meat sweats there. And
Here's my only question. And Chris, you can answer this from your perspective too. I like to know what's in the food that I'm eating. You said there's cream cheese or something in there. Like, you got no idea. Don't you want to know what the hell you're eating?
No, not in this case. I didn't.
Chris, do you want to know what you're eating?
Yeah, normally, and it's funny, I'm a little bit picky when it comes to stuff, but usually meat, I'm good to go. You know what's really funny about all this is when you're describing the whole, Larry, Darren, my first thought was, I wonder what kind of sauce you could dip that in. That was the first thing that came.
Okay. Full disclosure. After the first Raptor egg, again, about that big, probably a pound, I'm like, little barbecue sauce would really kind of get this thing going. So I went and got a jug of barbecue sauce.
That's me. I'm a huge condiment guy, right? So anytime I have something like that, and I love the jalapeno. You're obviously getting your green leafy vegetables out of that, right? Of course. And then the cheese. You got to have some sort of cheese in there somewhere. And barbecue sauce on there sounds pretty good. When you tweeted Raptor egg, I was like, I've never heard of this, but now I'm intrigued, and I might have to hit you up for the recipe.
No, you got to pre-order it. You go to your local butcher; they'll figure it out. Raptor egg, something along those lines. We've got a ton to get to here, and obviously we want to talk about the Bucs and the Chiefs and the Super Bowl, Brady versus Mahomes, what went on in the AFC, NFC on Sunday. But first, let's get to the UFC tilt. Am I one of the few guys that wasn't smart enough to put a little bit of cash or a lot of cash on Dustin Poirier over Conor McGregor?
Well, it's really interesting, especially when it comes to Conor McGregor, because people who don't watch UFC watch Conor McGregor fights. Like, I'm sure, I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I'm sure the pay-per-view buys for this card are far and above anything else, even when, frankly, there's better fighters on the card. He's just that name brand, and he's been phenomenal for Dana White in the UFC. So when people tune in, and if they're going to bet, they're going to bet on him and maybe not even think about how much they're laying. I think he closed at around minus 350, which translates to you've got to bet $350 to win 100, or some sort of ratio of that. Not everyone's betting at that amount. So at some point, the math tells you you're better off putting your money on the underdog. Dustin Poirier was paying out plus 275, which is where I got him. So $100 gives you a $275 profit. I didn't bet 100 on him either, but I did have a little bit down, and it was exciting. And a lot of times what you see when guys, especially in UFC cards, are big favorites like that, like Dan Hooker was, and he lost in the co-main. You get people making parlay tickets rather than single bets, and if you lose one leg of your parlay, you're done. Like, I saw something that came in, not at our site, but somebody had bet the Green Bay Packers, which turned out to be a moot point anyway, parlayed with Conor McGregor to win at an insane sum of money. And I ended up losing both of those bets. So sounds like something I do. But it was it certainly moves the needle. And it was a huge day for us at CoolBet.
And so when he goes down, does that do you find people that win, do they want to re-up the next one? Or is it just a one event?
Oh, you mean like take the money and run?
Do they take the money and run, or do they take it, leave it, and stay in?
Generally people will leave at least a little bit in their account and keep playing. Yeah,
because they want the action, right? They like the action, right? I get it.
And you're playing with house money then too, right? So I'm sure people who won on that fight then played the NFL yesterday or played the NHL yesterday, and if they won, great, and if they didn't, well, that's 2 days full of entertainment, for whatever price they wanted to pay. So yeah, we do see that a lot. Now, some people, you get your guys who are are just, quasi-professional, and they come in, they make the bet, they get their money, they get out. That's how they live. That's how they make money. It's their business model. But most people are recreational bettors. So unless it's a huge windfall, you'll leave it in and see if you can build off it. It's like, hey, Ray, it's like if you're sitting at a blackjack table, and I know you've told this story before about your exploits at the blackjack table. If you get up, you're not leaving. You're going to try and make more with the house's money.
I've seen Ray leave a blackjack table a couple of times.
Yeah, that's because I had dust left. I had dust left in my pockets, man.
All right,
now go to the football, Drakes.
Yeah, for sure. We talked about this, Chris, in episode 6. You had the Tom Brady factor. Officiating certainly went the way of Tampa Bay in this one over Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. But do you want to dissect the AFC and the NFC individually, or just leap forward to the Super Bowl and now you've got the Bucs and the Chiefs and how that looks? Let's talk about the AFC NFC first, because we'll have you on in episode 8 and we can preview the Super Bowl. But did these two games go down the way you expected they would go down?
For me personally, it was actually opposite. I thought Green Bay was gonna walk away. I think we learned yesterday that Tampa's defense is legit. And Tom Brady is the best to ever do it. He was, especially in the first half, he was shooting the lights out there. And then, there was some coaching, questionable coaching on Green Bay's side. 4th and goal with Aaron Rodgers. You're going to kick a field goal with 2 minutes left and expect to get the ball back. Probably, Matt LaFleur would like a do-over there. It's interesting. I thought Green Bay would win that game. I knew it would be close. But we saw, in terms of our site, we saw a lot of people coming in on Tampa Bay. It was one of these games that was really interesting because normally the public perception is heavily skewed one way or the other. And it was kind of a toss-up in terms of what people thought. And then with the AFC, I think a lot of people thought that KFC would roll like KFC. Now you got me thinking
I didn't
about
have
meat.
any of that.
You got me thinking about meat. It's lunchtime. Everyone thought that Kansas City would roll in that game, but living in Southern Ontario and being so close to Buffalo, and a lot of Canadians like the Bills, we saw a lot of action on the Bills. So that actually worked out for us. We needed the Chiefs to win from a profit perspective, and they did, which was great. So I thought the Chiefs were going to win. I'm really looking forward to the Super Bowl. I thought Green Bay was going to win, but coaching and an outstanding performance from the Bucs sunk them in the end.
I got to say, I'm not an NBA guy, so I don't really know if this comment is going to exclude somebody that I shouldn't. There's no more exciting athlete to watch than Patrick Mahomes now.
I agree.
I'm just amazed with what he can do. And whatever gasoline Tyreek Hill has in his tank, oh my gosh, when he gets going, it's like the Roadrunner and everybody's got lead in their shoes. It's amazing watching those guys play.
Yeah. So then how do you bet against Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl?
I don't.
Or how do you bet against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl? It's tough, right? It's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, I often think about it, clearly Patrick Mahomes' athletic ability is off the charts, and there's a whole lot of really talented offensive weapons there in Kansas City. But the play calling and the play design is unbelievable as well. Like, they do some things that you don't see any other team do, and they execute it to perfection most of the time. So I'm not one to give too much credit to coaching staffs a lot of the time, especially in the, a game when there's 11 guys on each side of the field. But when you really look at it, there's some really impressive work being done by Andy Reid and the staff in Kansas.
Okay, so that gives me one thought. So Matt LaFleur, who's a young guy who's, really had a really good year, and it comes down to one moment that maybe a lot of people don't like very much. There was a time Andy Reid was soundly criticized in Philadelphia. He can never win. He can't win. He doesn't know how to coach in the big moment. Now Andy Reid's a genius. Yeah. And it's amazing. You need time to make the full picture. And so I look at that and I think LaFleur screwed up. I think he would want to redo that again, certainly when it turned out the way it did. But maybe in 5 years, we're not talking about Matt LaFleur the same way we are this morning.
It's so interesting because we always talk about teams and players that need to lose first to figure it out. And I guess you put coaches in the same vein. Very few players, coaches, teams come into any situation and dominate right away. So it's a curious quirk about the sporting world, and something to keep in mind when you're betting. It really is. The guys who have the experience at the end of the day and they've shown it usually comes to the forefront.
All right, Chris. Well, we'll let you go on that. And as we teased, I mean, we look forward to episode 8, and we'll bite down on the Bucks and the Chiefs and all of the permutations of what that's going to look like from coolbit.co's perspective. So thanks for joining us here in episode 7. And we always have a good time, and we'll have a good time the next time we chat.
Thanks so much, guys. And Darren, that's why you're a professional. Bite down after the food segment. Unbelievable.
Talk
go
soon,
get boys.
Go get your raptor egg.
I'm on the way.
All right. Ask Ray and Driggs anything. We touched a little bit on Dylan's question about the crowd noise at NHL buildings. So we'll move on. Here's one that'll be near and dear to your heart, Ray. And it comes from Barry, because Barry knows, as do I, and anybody who listens to you on radio, that you're a huge baseball guy. Baseball is near and dear to your heart. So where do you rank now the late, great Hank Aaron on the all-time best player list? And Barry says for him, he's right at the top. No one did it better. An incredible 5-tool player. Hard to argue. So where does Hank Aaron, Hammerin' Hank, rate on your list?
He hit 20 home runs plus for 20 straight years. He drove in 2,700 runs. In my mind, he's the home run king at 755. He did it at a time where he was under enormous pressure. We only saw, like, he broke the home run record in 1973 or 74. Yeah. So I was 10. I didn't get to see him at his athletic best when he dominated defensively as well. He is at the very top. It was, and you read the stories after his passing of the number of people that had interactions with him that spoke in just amazing terms of Henry Aaron.
Excellent, Barry. Thank you for the question. You can fire off your questions to Ask Ray and Driggs anything on our social media channels or our website, rayandriggs.com. Dubois has been the theme of episode 7 here. So with the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade to the Winnipeg Jets, Carlo wants to know, I don't think it's Koliakovo, because I did morning radio with Carlo.
Well, Carlo would have been disappointed, or the question would have been about the Bills.
So we're taping this on Monday. I do Monday morning radio on TSN 1050 with Carlo and Michael Landsberg. He was subdued. He was quiet. He didn't have the usual Carlo Koliakovo pep in his step today. And so I don't know if you saw the tweet of his pregame meal with the chicken.
Oh, yeah.
And tucked in this mass of snack foods was a bottle of Grey Goose vodka. And I asked him on Twitter, what's the Grey Goose for? And he openly admitted that when the Bills score a touchdown, he does a shot. Well, he did a shot real quick because the Bills were out of the gate, boom. And that was it. So the good news is Carlo wasn't hungover for radio this Monday morning because he didn't drink a lot of vodka, unless he guzzled at the end when he realized that it wasn't going to be. And
it was gone. Yeah.
So the other Carlo wants to know, with the Line Dubois trade, do we think that now breaks the seal and that we're going to see more player movement, or it will be more stifled this season because of cap restraints and the cross-border travel issues? And I think it's going to be more stifled. And for me, this was the perfect storm because you had 3 somewhat unhappy players. Roslovic, of course, he didn't go to camp, doesn't have a contract, but he wasn't interested in negotiating a contract to stay in Winnipeg. Patrick Laine, his time was being measured now in games, right, to the end of the season, if lucky enough. And you had the Dubois situation in Columbus. So you've got 3 players who wanted change. And so to include all 3 of those, unique. We're not going to see that again, maybe in a long, long time. But I think the cross-border thing for sure is going to hamper deals. Do you think that this type of trade, though, might spark some activity on both sides of the border?
No, I don't. I don't. I mean, I used to hate the term dollar in, dollar out. But with an 81.5 cap, I mean, like, not only do you have to have somebody else that say I've got a problem on defense and I've got to find somebody else that has a problem on forward. Oh yeah, and they got to make the same money.
Yeah.
Like I just don't see it, unfortunately, happening, because from our perspective, it's super interesting and fun to talk about.
All right. Last question of Ask Ray and Dregs Anything from Neil. Early into the regular season, what has been our biggest surprises, good and bad? And Neil says, I think the North teams are going to sleep on the Ottawa Senators, get burned. Everyone ranked them 7th in the Canadian division will look like fools. So obviously Neil is an Ottawa Senators fan. And out of the gate, of course, I mean, Ottawa, we know they're going to compete and they're better than they were a year ago. But I think the North Division is going to be terrific hockey. I think Vancouver's going to find its stride at some point in the near future. And what you see is what you get from the Ottawa Senators. And sadly, for Neil, I think they are going to be a 7th place team, but they are going to be a team that keeps it interesting. And they might nibble. They might nibble at that 4 or 5 spot in the division.
See, I don't think they can get to that, Dregs. I think they're a 7th place team in this division, but I don't know why that's a negative, other than they're in last place. Obviously, that's a negative. They're young, they're inexperienced. I'm not sure what Matt Murray can give them in goal, and that's going to be a key deal. Like if Matt Murray's good, that's going to erase a lot of youthful mistakes, because they're not going to get more experience. They're going to get less experienced as this year goes on, and more young guys are going to play more and more and more. But I'm not disappointed in Ottawa at all. They play hard. They're in games, and I think they'll play well enough to lose a lot of close games. But in a very short time, we're talking about Ottawa very differently.
Excellent. All right. Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. What's your week looking like as we gear up for episode 8 of Ray and Dregs?
Actually, Dregs, I've got my second game of the year that I will be traveling to. I'll be in Edmonton on Thursday for the Oilers and the Leafs, which, again, I'm a little out of the mode of book and travel. So the game's Thursday. I booked my flight in there on the wrong day and booked it out on the wrong day. And our travel department had to say, Ray, isn't the game Thursday? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I don't need to be there Friday night, do I?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you taking a suitcase, or you're just going to leave it on the plane?
You know what? Since I'm in quarantine, I'm going to take a knapsack with my dress shirt, and I'm in, out, gone. That's it.
So you're going to
can't forget anything.
You're going to wear your suit jacket on the return flight back to Van?
No, I've got my suit jacket. What you don't wear really, you wear it to the airport, but I'm going to have my overcoat. It's cold in Edmonton, I assume.
I thought it was I thought it was a Glenn Healy special, right? Like one of those suit jackets that's dark blue or black, and you can fold it up into about that size because you bought it at some secondhand store for $40.
You've seen Heels' clothes? Heels has wrinkle-proof suits. It was really quite amazing to watch that man dress for an NHL season.
We haven't had Heels on the podcast, have we? Do we even?
I think we did, but we got to open him up. Now he's like, he's the head of the alumni. He's we need to open Heels up a little bit here, which usually isn't very hard.
Well, yeah, it used to be a bottle or a bottle and a half of Chardonnay, and you'd get your best out of Heels. I think he's off that, though. I think he's like toned it down now. He's maybe into light beer or something.
You know what? This is so Heels, boisterous, likes to chat lots and all that.
Here we go.
There's nothing like listening to Glenn Healy play bagpipes at 2:30 in the morning when you're trying to leave. And he says, why don't you stay for one more cold beer? And then you hear from the back room, it sounds, I don't know, what bagpipes sound like when they're warming up. What the hell are you doing, Heels? Come on.
I was at like a Robbie Burns night in Whitby, Ontario, many years ago. And Heels invited me. Holly and I went. And his pipe band is tremendous. Like I happen to, I love the pipes. I do. I like bagpipes. They make me tear up because Spanish Bay, if you've never been, when you stay at Spanish Bay, you're playing Spanish Bay. Tomorrow you're going to play Pebble Beach if you're lucky enough and all of those things. But what's unique about Spanish Bay is that a piper comes out every night right before dusk. And that's just to symbolize the end of the day. It's just a beautiful thing with the Pacific Ocean in the background and all those things. So I've got a soft spot for the pipes. So I can't remember the song that was being piped in as we're all doing this, waiting for Robbie Burns' dinner. And I get a look at Heels as he's walking in. And, in stature, he's like me, a little bit portly, short, stout, all of those things. I start howling because his face, like he's blowing on these things, and it's just like this. And his face is like purple, like a boil that's about to explode. And I start, and like people are like, I think it was like kind of a solemn entrance. Like you're not supposed to be laughing. And I'm killing myself looking because I'm sure his head's going to explode.
Now, when you described his face color,
yeah.
Okay, so he used to just give it to me in the press about how much I talk. So it was the 93 playoffs, and Heels was playing amazing. It was the best goal he ever played. Seriously, it was a career highlight for him. He was brilliant. And so in that playoff, around that time, there was Eddie the Eagle, Eddie Belfour, and Cujo, Curtis Joseph. And I said, and we got Barney the dinosaur. Look at him. Fans were sending Barney dolls to the rink. He was so sour.
That is
the purple heels, and he was so good.
Oh, it's okay. There you go. We've derailed here at the end of the podcast, but
we got to get that clown back on.
We do have to get Glenn Healy back on. All right, buddy. Enjoy your week. I know you're going to be busy. Safe travels. And
same to you, Dregs. Enjoy the week. Thanks everybody for listening. And Pierre-Luc Dubois was awesome today, and I hope you enjoyed that.
You bet. Huge shout out to our partners who make the podcast possible every week. Coolbet.co, the free-to-play sports and casino games website. Lagaro.com Jewelers. Valentine's Day is coming up in a hurry. Lagaro.com is where you want to go to get something that she's going to love, cherish, something special. Remember, use code RAY10 if you're interested in partnering with us as well. Hold on a sec. Use code RAY10 for Lagaro.com. And if you are interested in partnering with us, that was just offside. But there's no period in this paragraph. So I just kept meandering. I was on a roll there, Ray. I was on a full roll.
You were.
I was. Use code RAY10 when going to Lagaro.com. And if you are interested, I don't know why you would be after seeing me bat this thing around 17 ways but sideways. You can check us out on the website, rayandregs.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Rating, sharing. Look forward to episode 8.